The crowd was on the edge of their seats. The Palomino horse, known for its unmatched grace, streaked around the barrels with a flawless rhythm until, on the third barrel, something unexplainable happened. Was it fate? Or something darker? The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the dusty rodeo arena. It was a perfect summer evening, the kind that makes the crowd gather in excitement, eagerly waiting for the next big event. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind you could feel in your chest as people whispered and laughed, their eyes fixed on the barrel racing track. In the center of it all was Ella, standing tall beside her Palomino horse. The horse, with its creamy coat and dark mane, was a sight to behold. It moved with an effortless grace, its muscles rippling as it shifted slightly, sensing the energy in the air. Ella ran her hand gently over its neck, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of its body. She had spent countless hours training with this horse. It wasn't just a ride or a companion, it was a partner, one she trusted more than anyone. They had worked for years to get this moment right. Tonight wasn't just any race. This was the championship, the one Ella had dreamed of since she was a little girl watching her heroes from the stands. The crowd cheered as the other riders warmed up, but Ella's focus was entirely on her horse. She could feel the nerves creeping in, but she shoved them down. Tonight, she would make her mark. The barrel race was a test of speed, skill, and precision. But Ella knew this race was different. She had a feeling in her gut, something she couldn't explain, that tonight would be the night everything changed. She took a deep breath, giving the Palomino one last, comforting glance. The race was about to begin. The announcer's voice rang out over the loudspeakers, calling Ella and her Palomino to the starting line. The crowd's excitement grew louder as the two of them took their places. Ella could feel the eyes of everyone on her, but it didn't scare her. This wasn't the first race, and it definitely wouldn't be the last. She and her horse had been through it all. But something felt different tonight. Ella gently squeezed the reins, signaling her Palomino to move forward. The horse's hooves hit the ground with a soft thud as it trotted into position. The Palomino seemed calm, as if it knew this was the moment they had been preparing for. It stood tall and proud, its ears flicking back and forth, listening to every sound around them. As the timer counted down, Ella's heart began to beat a little faster, but her hands remained steady. This was what they had trained for, what she had spent her entire life dreaming of. It was just her and the horse now, nothing else mattered. The signal went off, and they were moving. The crowd's cheer faded into the background as Ella focused only on the track ahead. The first barrel came up quickly. With one smooth turn, the Palomino bent effortlessly around it, its hooves barely touching the ground as it flowed into the next turn. Ella's breath was steady, her body in perfect rhythm with her horse. She could feel the power in the Palomino's muscles as it responded to her slightest command. Together, they moved as one. The second barrel loomed, and once again, they were in sync. Ella's confidence grew with every stride. They were fast, precise, flawless. The horse's legs danced around the barrel, never slowing, never faltering. The timing felt perfect, as if the world had stopped moving just for them. The crowd's energy began to rise as they watched, impressed by the sheer grace and speed. Ella's eyes narrowed on the third barrel. She could see it in her mind, already the perfect turn, the perfect exit. She knew this would be the run of a lifetime. She leaned forward just slightly, encouraging the Palomino to pick up even more speed. The horse's breathing matched hers, calm and steady. There was no fear. There was only the track, the barrels, and the bond between them. Around the second barrel, they were still on track to beat any record set before. The Palomino's body moved in perfect harmony with Ella's body, a dance they had practiced so many times before. Ella's hands remained firm but gentle on the reins, guiding the horse with precision. It was a beautiful rhythm, the kind you only see once in a while. The crowd roared in approval, but it only pushed Ella harder. She wasn't racing for them, she was racing for herself and for the Palomino. They were almost there, with only one barrel left to go. The end was in sight. Ella could feel the thrill of it all rushing through her, her pulse quickening as they moved even faster. She wasn't sure what the time would be, but she knew they were giving it everything they had. The perfect run had begun. The third barrel was in sight now, and Ella could feel the adrenaline surge through her veins. She leaned forward slightly, urging the Palomino to push harder. The first 2 barrels had been perfect, every turn, every stride, smooth as silk. She could almost hear the rhythm of their movements in her head, a steady beat like the ticking of a clock. One more turn, one more push, and the race would be theirs. But as they approached the 3rd barrel, something shifted. It was subtle at first, just a slight change in the air, like a chill that brushed against the back of Ella's neck. She didn't pay much attention to it, focusing instead on the turn ahead. The Palomino's hooves hit the dirt, its body bending in preparation for the sharp curve. And then, just as they were about to complete the turn, something strange happened. For a moment, the Palomino hesitated. Its body froze, as if it were listening for something Ella couldn't hear. Its ears flicked back sharply, and the once steady rhythm of their movements faltered. Ella felt it, to a sudden, unnatural pause. The reins felt different in her hands, like the horse was no longer fully in her control. Her heart skipped a beat. Was something wrong? The crowd seemed to hold their breath. Ella's mind raced. She tried to pull the horse back into sync, but the Palomino didn't respond in the way it usually did. Instead, it veered slightly to the left, away from the barrel. The move was so out of character, so unexpected, that Ella's stomach dropped. In that instant, the world around her seemed to blur. The sound of the crowd dimmed, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to slow down. She glanced down at the Palomino, but what she saw wasn't just the horse she knew so well. There was something different in its eyes. Something aware. As if it wasn't just following Ella's lead, but sensing something beyond the physical world. The Palomino's muscles rippled under the sleek coat, but there was an odd, electric energy in the air now, something Ella couldn't place. The ground beneath them seemed to shift for a moment. The dust in the air hung strangely still, the wind ceasing completely. And then, almost as if the entire arena itself had taken a breath, the Palomino straightened, its body moving with a sudden, unnatural speed, and completed the turn flawlessly. It was over in an instant. Just as quickly as it had happened, everything returned to normal. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers filling the air. But Ella couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in that brief moment, something unexplainable. She pulled the reins gently to slow the Palomino as they headed towards the finish line, but her mind was racing. What had just happened? She glanced over at the horse, but the Palomino's eyes seemed distant now, as if it were lost in thought, too. Ella's heart still pounded in her chest, but it wasn't from the speed of the run anymore. It was from the confusion, the unease that clung to her like a shadow. The 3rd barrel had been their perfect moment, but something about it, something she couldn't quite understand, had felt wrong. As Ella crossed the finish line, the world around her seemed to come back into focus. The roar of the crowd was deafening, but it felt distant, like she was hearing it through a thick fog. She slowed the Palomino to a walk, her grip on the reins still tight, though her hands had started to tremble. She was trying to shake off the feeling that something was off. But the harder she tried, the more it lingered. The Palomino walked with its usual grace, its steps even, but Ella couldn't ignore the strange energy that still clung to them both. The turn at the 3rd barrel had been perfect, too perfect. But what had really happened? As she guided the horse toward the stables, the feeling in her chest grew heavier. The race was over, and they'd finished strong, but the moment she'd had with the horse on that 3rd barrel was still eating at her. Something wasn't right. When she dismounted, her legs felt shaky, as though the run had drained every ounce of energy she had left. She walked the Palomino into the stable, offering it a gentle pat on the neck, but the horse didn't respond the way it usually did. Normally, the Palomino would nuzzle into her, seeking comfort and praise, but now it stood quietly, its eyes distant, as if lost in thought. Ella leaned against the stable wall, her mind racing. The crowd's excitement still echoed in her ears, but it felt disconnected from her own thoughts. Everyone was cheering, congratulating the other racers, but no one seemed to notice what had happened during the 3rd barrel. They were caught up in the thrill of the race, of the speed, of the spectacle. But to Ella, there was something deeper at play. Her heart still beat fast, but it wasn't from the rush of the run anymore. It was from a growing sense of unease. She tried to replay the moment in her head. Everything had been perfect until that split second at the 3rd barrel. She could still see the Palomino's hesitation, feel the sudden shift in the air. It was like the horse had known something, felt something, that she hadn't. Ella's fingers brushed the reins again, as if to ground herself, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was trying to tell her something. "Ella, you did it!" A voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see one of the other riders, a tall man named Lucas, walking toward her. He was grinning, his face lit up with excitement. "You were amazing out there. That was the best run I've ever seen." Ella forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She nodded and gave a polite response, but her mind wasn't there. It was still stuck on that moment at the third barrel. Lucas didn't notice her distraction. He clapped her on the back and moved on to congratulate the other racers. But Ella's thoughts were still locked on the Palomino. The horse had acted so strange in that moment, so different. Ella knew it had to be more than a slip-up, more than a simple mistake. It was as if something outside of her control had happened, something bigger than both of them. As she stood in the stable, the weight of it all pressed down on her. The mystery had only deepened, and now Ella couldn't decide whether she wanted answers or whether she was too afraid to ask. Ella couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened during the race, something she couldn't explain. It was more than just a strange moment, it felt like an answer she wasn't ready to hear. 4 days after the race, she couldn't focus on anything but that instant at the third barrel. What had gone wrong? Why had the Palomino hesitated like that? And why did it feel like the horse was responding to something Ella couldn't see or feel? Unable to let it go, Ella decided she needed answers. She spent the next few days asking around, but no one seemed to know anything. Most of the other riders and trainers shrugged off her questions, offering her simple, unhelpful answers. "The horse probably just got distracted," one of them said, "or maybe it was just a little off tonight." But Ella knew better. She had been riding that Palomino for years, and it had never behaved like that before. It was late one afternoon when Ella decided to speak to Jack, an old cowboy who had been around the rodeo world longer than anyone she knew. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. Jack had seen it all, from wild horses to strange occurrences at the races. Ella figured if anyone knew what might be going on, it would be him. She found Jack sitting on a bench outside the barn, cleaning his boots. He looked up as she approached, his eyes narrowing slightly as he saw the seriousness in her face. "Jack, I need to ask you something," Ella said, her voice low. "I had a strange experience during the race. My horse, something happened during the third barrel. I don't know how to explain it. It was like he knew something, or sensed something that I didn't. Have you ever seen anything like that before?" Jack paused, his hand stilling on the boot in his lap. He looked at Ella for a long moment, and for the first time, she saw something unreadable in his eyes. After a beat, he set the boot aside and sighed. "You're asking the right questions, Ella," he said slowly. "But some things are better left untouched." Ella's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, looking around the barn as if making sure no one else was listening. Finally, he spoke again. "Not all horses are just horses, girl. Some of them, they're tied to something bigger. And sometimes, they show us things we're not ready to see." Ella's breath caught in her throat. The mystery was only deepening. Days passed, but the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave Ella. The third barrel that moment kept replaying in her mind over and over. She couldn't shake the unease, the strange sensation that there was more to it than just a mistake or a glitch in the routine. So, Ella decided to race again. It wasn't about the championship anymore. It was about understanding what had happened. She saddled up the Palomino early one morning, the arena still quiet, with only the distant sound of birds overhead. There were no crowds, no pressure, just her and the horse. She needed to know if it was a fluke, or if something more unexplainable was happening. As they neared the third barrel, Ella felt that same chill in the air, the same pull that had happened the first time. Her heart quickened. The Palomino's stride was smooth, but it slowed ever so slightly as they approached the barrel. Ella's hand tightened on the reins. This time, there was no hesitation, no doubt. The horse surged forward, completing the turn perfectly. But it wasn't the same. That strange energy was still there, like an invisible thread pulling at both of them, and Ella knew this wasn't over. The air was thick with tension as Ella and the Palomino rounded the third barrel again. This time, Ella was ready. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from anticipation. She was no longer just racing for the finish line, she was racing for the truth. As they neared the barrel, the same chill swept over her. The Palomino hesitated, just like before, its eyes widening with an unspoken awareness. Ella's breath caught in her throat, but this time, she didn't try to pull the reins. She let go completely. She gave the horse control. In that moment, something shifted between them. The Palomino's movements became fluid, almost otherworldly. Ella felt a whisper, not in her ears, but in her mind, soft, urgent, like a voice she couldn't quite place. "You're not alone," it seemed to say. Suddenly, the truth hit her like a wave. The horse wasn't just responding to her, it was connected to something bigger. The hesitation wasn't fear or confusion, it was a signal, a warning of something beyond this world, something unseen. Ella let the energy flow through her, trusting the Palomino completely. They finished the turn, and as they raced to the finish, Ella knew this wasn't just a race. It was a calling. Ella and the Palomino crossed the finish line, but the crowd's cheers felt distant, almost irrelevant. What had happened on the third barrel was no longer a mystery, it was a revelation. The horse wasn't just a partner in the race, it was a guide, connected to something much larger than anything Ella could comprehend. As they walked off the track, Ella felt a deep peace settle in her chest. The unease from before had disappeared, replaced by a sense of knowing. She understood now. Some things, some connections, were beyond explanation. She didn't need answers, only trust. The Palomino's steps were calm, its head held high. It had shown her something she'd never forget, something that couldn't be put into words. Ella whispered softly, her voice barely audible above the noise, "Thank you." Together, they rode into the sunset, knowing their journey had only just begun.